we're up to Siman Lam and Gimel. So the Mechaber writes in Aleph. These halachas are, I can't say are very practical. We'll run through them fairly quickly. This Mechaber is dealing with if the four boxes, if the four bottom have a tear. Now the tear is usually not even going to be on the outside. It's more in the inside compartments. There's a tear. So now you don't have four compartments because if there's a tear, that means there's an opening. So the Mechaber Shita is im niskalkel or shel shnei batim mibati harosh. If two of the boxes get torn, so that it depends on are the boxes next to each other. So think of the four boxes A, B, C, D. So if A and B get torn, then we have issues. If A and C get torn, so they're not even next to each other, then it's fine. But if they're torn, then it's considered a complete breach in those boxes. So the Mechaber says, Zeh etzel zeh, if the two boxes are next to each other, then the halach is as follows. Im atfilim yishanim, if the tefillin are old, psulim. We'll define old in a moment. But if they're old, they're puzzle. Im him chadashim ksherim. But if they're new, they're kosher. Kol zman she'or moishev habatim kaim. As long as the titura is still intact, if they're new, they're kosher. If they're old, they are puzzle. Now, correct. Or I think that the only way you would have a psul is if something dramatic happens to it. So the Ramah says, Gam habatim tzrichim lios kayamim el shenikru ktsas. B'yesham lehepech b'yishanim ksher b'chadashim psulim. Yesh lahachmer l'fsul shneim. The Ramah says, but some say the opposite, that it's only puzzle if they're old. It's only kosher if they're old, puzzle if they're new. So because of this, just avoid it entirely. Basically, if there's a tear on the two boxes next to each other, it's going, according to the Ramah, it's going to be a problem because miman of shach, there's someone who's going to passel it. Now the Mishnah Berurah just says, before we define new and old, the Mishnah Berurah says, Pirish nifsak v'nasa kera, mebati aroish, avam nasa kera babai shal yad. Now if this happens, they have pictures over here. They have, see like a tear, again, it's a tear in the boxes, whatever, in the inside of the boxes. Now if it's the shal yad, then,
why would it be enough community?
So, if it's a shel yad, though, if there's just a tear in the shel yad, then it's a problem because there's no other boxes. It's just one box. Now the Mishnah Berurah says, why does it make a difference if they're next to each other? In Sivkat and Gimel, Ratzalomer, habatim im smuchim l'zelza. Afilu im akroim smuchim kigon shekara echa babayis hasheni b'doif na'imini v'kara hasheni babayis hagimel lo yishna b'doif na'imini oy b'smoili v'mkar zelamata. So that's interesting. If they're next to each other, it's a psul even if they're torn in different directions. But as long as you have two boxes that are next to each other, I think the cheshbon is that when one wall is torn, there's 2 more minutes. If their one wall is torn, it's considered half a tear. If you have a tear on either side, then it's considered a full rib. So yeshenim psulim. Now, the Mishnah Berurah says tikvar niskalkelu machmas yoshan. The reason why the Mechaber holds if they're old, it's puzzle is because A, they're older, so they're already weakened, and you have the torn, that's gone. Now. Mishnah Berurah says Yoshin Vayesh Oimrim, but the Ramah says the opposite. The Bechadashim Igloy Milsa the Armakulkulhu. On the opposite, they hold the opposite. That if it's new and it's torn, the Ramah, who says that it's a problem if it's new, he would say if it's new, how are they torn? The answer is it must have been a shvach, meaning it must have been a weakened kli. Okay, now, so what is the definition of new and what's the definition of old? So the Mishnah Berurah says, the Mechaber says, one second. Yeah, okay, that's.
The sofer has to look in the reflection.
I think, like I said, I think that this would only be if there's a dramatic, something happened to it, like it fell.
The only way to know is you have to look inside.
No, so I'm saying I think that it wouldn't be there wouldn't be a tear unless something dramatic happens to it. I think when they're making it, it's not going to be torn. It takes a lot to tear leather. I think it's more if it fell.
And you have to tell the sofer.
I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea, to be honest with you. So the Mishnah Berurah says, let's just see a couple of Mishnah Berurahs. Chadashim ksherim afilu hakara b'shnei ba'at. I'm sorry, kayim. That what needs to be kayim though is the titura. Haynu hatitura of Beis Yosef pirish debo yishashlim mikol atzadim. According to the Beis Yosef, it has to be on all sides. But according to the Ramah, as long as the titura is kayim and it's new, it's fine. Now, what's the definition of new? So the Mechaber says, Eilu heina chadashim. Kol zman shemayu moishchen oisei b'ritzuis habayis mispashin. Basically, I would not do this with my tefillin. Basically, if you were pulling the shel rosh straps, would the 4 boxes spread? Now, this is assuming that it's all one piece of leather. The way we do it, where it's the titura is a separate piece, obviously it's not going to spread. But assuming it's one piece, apparently if it's brand new, it'll spread out. If it's older, it'll stay tight. I would have thought the opposite. So it says in Mechaber, Kol zman shemoishleis of Ritzus habayis mispashev and nipchas nikra chadash. Im eina nipchas nikra yashin. Okay. V'in miskalklu shnayim zeh shaloi keneged zeh. And let's say the box is tear, it's A and C tear. Then rishon v'shlish ksherim, afilu ksherim. Then even if they're old, v'in miskalklu gimel batim b'chol inim psul. But if 3 boxes tear, even if they're not next to, they're not lined up. So A tears on the left side, C tears on the left side, and D tears on the right side. 3 you're out. 3 you're out. Now we'll do quickly Sif Beis. The Mechaber says im nifseku tfiris hatfilin. This is this is the sinews on the bottom. The sinews on the bottom. So if they tear, so leharambam hayushet tfiris zu b'tzad zu. So according to the Rambam, basically, if you show a picture, the top one and the bottom one, but they're aligned. If they tear, 2 of them, that's a psul. Gimel tfiris, or if 3 not lined up, harelu psul. Ba'med v'mur b'yishenim, this is when they're old. Aval b'chadashim, but when they're new, kol zman, and what's the definition of new? Sha'ar moshe v'abatim kayim ksherim. As long as they're new and the titura's existence is kosher. Ve'elohin chadashim. Now, what's considered new for this discussion? The previous discussion was pulling it and they would spread. What's the definition of new for this discussion? Kol sha'ich san mikta sa'ar shenikra tfarai v'toilin by hatfilin v'hu chazak ve'ina nifsak. If you're able to hold a part of it that the sinew is torn, pick up the part that the sinew is torn and basically hold it upside down. If the entire tefillin stay in your hand, good. If it crumbles, meaning if it's being held together by that, then that's a problem. And the Rama says the same thing. Some say the opposite, that old is kosher and new is puzzle, and therefore toiv lachos shesvaras now. Again, better to be machmer and to basically, if there's a tear in this situation, you're going to have to get it fixed. I will stop here.